on page 48, Memches of the Rav Friedlander print. If you're following the paragraphs, we would be in the middle of paragraph 56. The Ramchal explained to us the two quote-unquote supervisory powers that the Ribono Shalom uses over the world, Hanhagas Hatov, Hanhagas Hashlita, Hanhagas Hayichud. That is the real source of all supervision of the world. It's a supervision where the perfectly imperfect world, the perfectly imperfect person is being brought to perfection, irrespective of our narrow view of events that happen to us, and irrespective of our narrow view of events that happen around the world. Bubbling and percolating inside all these events is moving forward to the Geula Shalema, which we don't see now because we live in the present. We have some recollection of the past, but the Ribono Shalom, the Haya over the year, has the entire picture in front of him. Every puzzle piece there is absolutely necessary for the Geula Shalema. That's the real Hanhaga of the world. There is also a Hanhaga, supervisory power, that the Ribono Shalom uses to allow good and evil in the world, which is to allow us to make choices, and through those choices, Bechira, we make the choices and we can end up with reward and earning the reward. And even in that Hanhaga, where the Ribono Shalom allows evil and good to be decided upon by man, percolating and bubbling in there is the true supervisory power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world, which is the Koach HaShlita, the Koach HaYichud, his sovereign power. He controls everything. The evil that occurs in the world is not happening because it's a separate power from the Ribono Shalom. Yes, we make the choices that may result in evil, but the Ribono Shalom created the system of choice for the purpose of the percolating, bubbling purpose in there, so that we can make the choices and get reward. So the whole Bechira system, which includes evil, the possibility of around evil, is there for our schar. So Ramchal now is going to say, therefore, there are three things we need to understand. The mashal that Rav Friedlander highlighted for us yesterday in footnote 100, which the Ramchal is going to talk about later, Rav Friedlander got it from Ramchal, is when you think about a guf and a neshama, the guf is, it can't do anything. When a person dies, we talked about that yesterday. The neshama is taken from his body. His eyes can't see, his ears can't hear, his tongue can't taste, his heart can't beat, his lungs can't breathe. The neshama is the power pack. It's a battery for everything. You take a battery, you put it into a toy. That battery allows the siren on the toy to work. That battery allows the lights to flash on top of the police car. That battery makes the wheels on the car move. So it's only one battery. You don't have to, sometimes you have a toy that needs 4 AA's, but it's the same battery. You don't need a battery that makes the lights work, a battery that makes the siren work, a battery that makes the wheels turn. The battery in your real car, you turn on your car, the battery's working, the battery can make the radio turn on, the battery can make the lights turn on, the battery can make the air conditioner turn on. You don't have the battery, those things don't work. So although it's one battery, it can feed power into a sound system so you can hear things. It can feed power into a light system so that you can see things. It can feed power into an air conditioning system so you feel cool air. One battery, but because the battery is feeding power into things that are assembled differently and do different things, the battery gives off power that multiple things can go off and do multiple tasks. And the same thing is true of the neshama. The neshama is that battery, and the neshama gives the eye the power to see. It gives the ear the power to hear. It gives the tongue the power to taste. It gives the heart the power to pump. It gives the lungs the power to breathe. It's only one neshama, it's one battery, but it has the ability to give out power so that different organs can do their many different tasks. The same way that is true, we see the guf, and we talk about the eyes can see. We talk about the ears can hear. It's the neshama making the eyes see, neshama making the ears hear. In fact, the Ramchal explains in the Sefer that your eyeballs, your ears, are actually organs that decrease your ability to see and decrease your ability to hear. Chazal tell us that a neshama, which is a chelik elokim imal, it's a completely ruchnius creation. It is able to be roeh misofa olam va'ad sofa. It has no limits how far it can see. It doesn't have a limit of a mile, 2 miles, 10 miles. The neshama being a chelik elokim imal, the neshama being godly. Therefore, the same way the Ribono Shel Olam can see from one end of the universe to the other end of the universe, although that's really not a correct thing to say. Chazal talk in our language, but there's no end to the universe. And I think I saw yesterday or 2 days before some absolutely incredible numbers about discovery of some universe or some galaxy that's 1 million or something light. They think it's 1 million light years away from us. It was just beyond imagination. But in order to talk in our language, Chazal tell us that the neshama, this godly neshama, can see from one end of the universe to the other. So the Ramchal says, now you take the neshama and you put it inside a body. And the neshama gives the eyeballs the ability to see. How far can those eyes see? 100 feet, 500 feet, whatever it can see. The eyeballs have limited the neshama's ability to see. The neshama can hear from one end of the world to the other. You put the neshama in the body with ears, now its hearing is limited. So the Ramchal tells us that the body's organs limit the neshama. The tzimtzum of creation on a global in a global concept, we talk about tzimtzum. It's also true for the creation of man. You take a neshama that has unbelievable powers of sight, unbelievable powers of hearing, unbelievable powers of thinking, and you put it into a human body, the neshama is now constricted. It needs to use the eyes. Well, I used to be able to see from one end of the world to the other, now I can only see 500 feet. So while people think that the eyes are what gives you sight, in fact, the eyes are what are mitzamtzem your sight, because your neshama can see much further than your eyeballs. Nevertheless, that's the way the Ribono Shel Olam created the world. The guf is what we see, the eyeballs is what we see, the ears are what we see, and because of that optical illusion, we say, my eyes see, my ears hear, because we can't see the neshama. But the neshama is the battery pack. The little toy is running around the floor, making a siren and flashing lights, and you can't see the battery. You don't see the battery. The power source for the human being is his neshama, which can't be seen. What can be seen is the guf. Therefore, the same way we understand that there's a neshama that's running all the organs of the body, even though you can't see the neshama, everything that's happening in the world that we see as hanhagas hamishpat, good, evil, bad choices, good choices, it looks like that's happening in a vacuum. It's not happening in a vacuum. Because inside all of that, just like inside the guf that we can see, what's running the guf? The neshama. What's running all these events? You can't see it, but what's running it is the hanhagas hayichud, hanhagas hatayv. The perfectly imperfect events, the perfectly imperfect world, the perfectly imperfect person. Inside all of this, like a neshama in a guf, It's being supervised, all to bring about perfection. So there are three things you need to understand. If we were talking about the guf, we would want to understand the organs of the guf. We would want to understand the neshama. And then we would want to understand how the neshama makes the organs of the guf work. Three subjects. Explain to me guf, which is probably biology. Explain to me neshama, which is a study of ruchnius. Now explain to me how the ruchnius inside the gashmius makes the gashmius work. In fact, one of the explanations to the bracha of Asher Yotzar, brought down by the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch, we say, Baruch atah Hashem, rofei chol basar umafli lasos. Thank you, God, for healing the sick. Rofei kol basar, you heal all flesh. When a person has, the Baruch Shalom gives a person the ability, to relieve himself without having going through lo aleinu dialysis. Lo aleinu, people cannot function properly. They need a machine to help them. That's a lo aleinu situation. A person is able to naturally relieve himself. You make a bracha, roifei chol basar umafli lasos. You heal all flesh, because now you're healthier by having relieved yourself of the psolas in your system. And then you say, umafli lasos. God, you do wondrous things. What are the wondrous things that God does that we're talking about after we leave the bathroom? So the Ramon Shulchan Aruch says, umafli lasos is just, the human body is just amazing. Because the Rebbeinu Shalom was makasher gashmi baruchni. The Rebbeinu Shalom took the neshama and put it into a guf, something completely spiritual that is running, supervising something that's completely gashmi, completely physical and mundane. How do you keep these two things together that have really lachor and no shaykhs? The completely spiritual neshama that has no physicality to it, running and controlling a body that's completely physical and without neshama has no spirituality to it. How do you take these two things and put them together, and not only put them together, but give the neshama the ability to actually run the guf? Mafli lasos. That's the bracha of mafli lasos, that the Rebbeinu Shalom, you do wondrous things by connecting the guf and the neshama. So Ramchal is going to tell us in the next few lines that there's the study of three things. Just like at the neshama and the guf, mashal, I need to understand the guf. I then need to understand the neshama. Then I need to study how the neshama actually runs and supervises the guf. When I'm dealing with the world and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu supervises the world, I have the same three questions. I want to study Hanhagas HaMishpah. I want to study that supervisory power of God, where He allows evil and good to occur in the world. Where does the evil come from? Where does the good come from? Did God create evil? Did man bring evil into the world? Where did God create the concept? What is evil? Where did it come from? What is good? Where did it come from? How does God run this good and evil? Is it running on its own? Does God still keep control over good and evil? I need to understand this supervisory power of the Midas HaMishpah. And then there's the Hanhaga Shlita, Hanhagas HaToiv, Hanhagas HaYichud. That's the real power that God uses. That's the power that's percolating inside the power of good and evil, where God's going to take every event, every person, the whole world, every imperfect, the perfectly imperfect person, the perfectly imperfect world, the perfectly imperfect event, and He's going to perfect it. And it's all percolating in here. Just like the neshama is percolating in the guf and controlling it, the Hanhagas HaToiv, to bring the world to perfection, is percolating in every event, every person, the whole universe. So here I need to study three things too. I need to understand the Hanhagas HaMishpah, how God is supervising the good and evil. And then I need to understand this Hanhagas HaTov, Hanhagas HaYichud, Hanhagas HaShlita, where God is actually controlling the world from within the events. And then I need to understand how the two are brought together, how one percolates and bubbles in the other. So on page 48, Siman Nun Vav, The Ramchal says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the top. If you're in a Friedlander's print, v'sof kol sof pri pulas hashlemus yeh hechzir kol hanhog elav legamri. At the end of the whole process, maybe an expiration of 6,000 years, chas v'sholom, but hopefully today, the end of the process is hechzir kol hanhoga elav legamri. It's going to be to return the whole supervision of the world, where man will understand that it all is Hanhagas HaToiv. There's only one supervisory power, and that's Toiv. But God willed a world that wouldn't be just run on Hanhagas HaToiv, because if it's just run on Hanhagas HaToiv, then everyone's going to have 3 lollipops thrown at them, and what you get in Olam Haba will not be what you earned. And we learned that at the beginning of the Sefer. The ultimate Hatova is that man has the ability to earn that which he gets in Olam Haba. Earning means choices. Choices means evil and good. But that process is going to come to an end, because eventually it's all going to be brought to the culmination of perfection and good. From Esa Inyan Shlishi, this is what we just talked about. Ramchal says this is the third thing we're going to have to study, the Inyan Shlishi. Lahavchen b'chol midah mimidos avispar, to understand in every one of God's midos. V'hu hi Moshech told us hamida hahi mikah pulas hashlemas atzmoi. V'harei zeh k'mo dover emtzoi. We're now talking about the middle ground. We have a neshama, we have a guf, and now we have the middle study. How do I bring these two together? How do I take the extreme guf, the extreme neshama, and bring them together through a medium in the middle? That's the third study. And the same thing is true about what we're studying in Daas Tevunos. Hanhogas HaMishpat, through which good and evil occur in the world. Hanhogas HaToiv, where God is constantly perfecting the world. Now that I understand each of these things independently, how does the Hanhogas HaToiv actually work inside the Hanhogas HaMishpat? That's the third study. This is a middle ground, being hashlemus, between the ultimate perfection, uvein hamida lafi inyana, and the other midas that are running the world. And it changes between midas. In other words, when we go back to the neshama and the guf, the neshama is sending out power to the eyeball so that it can see. That's a different kind of power that it's sending to the ear so that it can hear. This is a very important point to understand how we live in terms of physicality. This is where the battery marshal is not correct. You take the double A, you put it into the car. That double A just sends out power, general power. That general power can light up the siren. The general power that can light up the light. It can make the siren go off. It can make the wheels move. The battery inside it doesn't have a place where there is, this piece of the battery makes the light go on. This piece of the battery makes the siren go on. This piece of the battery makes the lights flash. You turn on your car. There's no part of your battery that, this is the air conditioner part of the battery. Or this is the headlight part of the battery. This is the brights part of the battery. This is the radio part of the battery. It's a battery. It just sends off power. What we're dealing with here is much more complicated. The neshama is a life-giving source, but it doesn't just send out, boom, life. And therefore the eyes come alive, and the ears come alive, and the tongue come alive, everything come alive. The neshama is a spiritual vehicle that has particular powers in it. The neshama sends out power of sight to the eye. It sends out power of hearing to the ear. It sends out power of taste to the taste buds. It's not a battery that just, it sends out power and everybody do with the power that what you want. Air conditioner go on, lights go on, radio go on. This is much more complicated. It is a source that sends the appropriate energy, the appropriate power to the appropriate organ. The eye gets the power to see as needed for the eye. The ear gets the power to hear as needed for the ear. And this analogy now brings us to the midos. The Ribono Shel Olam runs the world with chesed sometimes. What's percolating inside that chesed? The Tov. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to bring the world to perfection. Sometimes the Ribono Shel Olam runs the world api midas hadin. What's percolating inside that midas hadin? Tov. The Ribono Shel Olam is always, no matter what he's doing, what event, what midah, he's bringing the perfectly imperfect world to perfection. So therefore, we don't have one midah. It's a midah that's giving power. The midas shlita is giving power to each separate midah. So again, this is three different things happening here. The same way the neshama empowers, gives the guf eyeball power, ear power, and it's different powers. And we need to study the ear, the eye. We need to study the neshama. And then we need to study how the neshama feeds the ear, the neshama feeds the mouth, the neshama feeds the eye. The same thing is true. We have the midas hatov, and that's the ultimate midah where the Ribono Shel Olam is perfecting the world. And then we have these midos here of Hanhagas HaMishpat. And in Hanhagas HaMishpat, there's all kinds of midos. There's the midah of Chesed, Gevura, Din, everything. And percolating inside every single one of them is going to be the midas hatov. And how the midas hatov runs each of these independent midos is a separate study. The same way how the neshama powers the eyes is separate from the way the neshama powers the ears. Because depending upon the midah, chesed, gevura, din, whatever it is, that will determine the effect that the midah hashlemus will have on it. V'yesh lahafim gam be'emtsois hazois inyona ha'atzmi v'derech ha'soso k'moshen avar la'alel. And I will explain this as we go through the Sefer. The Ramchal says, I'm going to explain this to you. Or as the Sefer says, neshama, I'm going to explain this to you. I'm going to explain to you how the neshama inside the guf is running each part of the guf, and how the midas hatov is percolating and running every event that happens to a person, every event that happens in the world.